Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is BWTM Sports, and you're doing a watch along. You're doing a watch along. So tonight we're going to do say 18, maybe 19 minutes of find out what halotestin is. I hope I pronounce it right. From what the brief information I've know about it, it's to do with it's a drug that fighters can use to build strength and also aggression. So I haven't looked at this video, but I'm going to try and educate and learn a lot more about PEDs in boxing, in sports, so I have a better awareness of it, and obviously our viewers have got a better awareness of it as well. So here's the first video I've just pulled up and had a look at. I just looked at the title of it, so I'm literally watching it for the first time. So it's a watch along. So let me get my screen up, get this up, let me get myself up on the screen. Welcome to BWTM Sports Gaming. So this is about PEDs in boxing, and I'll be doing some research by the expert. So it's an expert talking about, it's a physician talking about this, but I'm gonna know a bit about it now. So it's a watch along video. So let's watch along and hear what this physician has to say.
Halotestin, Fluoxymesterone. This is a classic oral anabolic steroid, classic to the old days. This is my ongoing education for healthcare providers with the drugs and the Peds that you're going to see in your patients even to this day. Although this is not one of the classically used current steroids of the day, and we'll talk about why. It's got a limited use. It's seen as a drug for aggression and strength and recovery. It's not classically used for bodybuilders. Who uses this drug? Boxers, MMA fighters, and powerlifters. They like to use it acutely. We're going to talk about that. The history of this drug goes back to 1956 when it was first described as a halogenated derivative of testosterone, thought to be 5 times greater anabolic and androgenically than methyl testosterone, which was one of the first classic oral steroids back in the day. Brought to market back in the late 50s by Upjohn. This was a drug for human use, and it was marketed for medical uses for both men and women. Usual state of affairs back then, it was for anti-catabolic states medically for men and women. Burns, debilitating states, any debilitated state after surgery. You have to imagine back then, these drugs were not seen as villains. They were seen as amazing agents to help in the armamentarium of people, men and women, to recover from any catabolic or debilitated states after surgery. I've had stories of so many patients. These are men now in their late 70s, even 80s, saying that they've actually used this drug, among other drugs like Anavar and Anadrol, prescribed by doctors during that time period in the 70s and 80s. I had a skier tell me that he had a very bad injury of his rotator cuff and shoulder, and after his surgery, he was prescribed this drug, he remembers, for a short period of time to help him recover by the orthopedic surgeon and his primary care doctor. What else was it used for medically? Chronic COPD, malnutrition, and long-term utility against corticosteroid applications. Prednisone, people that had rheumatoid arthritis. This is a drug that was used and marketed for that back in that day. Also thought to be used for TRT for men. Also used in women. Abnormal menstrual bleeding called menorrhagia in women. And classically, like other anabolic steroids back in the day, for advanced metastatic breast cancer, for women that have breast cancer. Absolutely amazing. Now, I want to bring up an amazing feature. You could see now why you hear the stories of physicians back in the 1970s giving steroids. You can imagine the bodybuilders, like way back when in the 70s in California, on the beaches, and physicians were giving steroids. We're not giving a blessing. I'm the anabolic doc. It's today, we're almost into 2019 today, folks. Steroids are still out there. They've been demonized and pushed down. They're controlled drugs now. We understand why. Back in the 1970s, doctors were not just openly prescribing these drugs like they were some kind of scumbags and they were cheaters. They were giving because they thought it helped people, and it did help people. It helps with muscle. So they helped people, they thought. And then, of course, when you see it, when you look backward and you look in the history, you look backward and you can see they had severe side effects. And that's why in the 1970s, the FDA started to limit all these drugs. But imagine, this came onto the market in the late 50s. So you had into all the 1960s, into the 70s, at least 10 to 15 years of utility medically. It's incredible. And of course, it was being used by the sports, by the NFL. It was used by powerlifters and bodybuilders back then, and boxers. We're going to talk about that. So into the 1970s, the medical history continues. The FDA limited the focus for this to be only for TRT for men. This was actually HRT for men. Postpartum bleeding in women, metastatic breast cancer for women, and postmenopausal osteoporosis for women. Now remember, these were all elderly women that were on this medicine, not for 2 or 3 weeks. They were using this medicine for months, maybe even years. I'm asking for any doctors back in the 1970s and 80s, please come forward and contact me confidentially, if you will. Call my office or email me. I'd love to hear some stories, because remember, these were used by tens and thousands of people. Currently, the FDA still allows this medicine. It's for TRT for men, but no one is going to use this for TRT for men. But if you look up in the FDA, it's still there. And breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer for women. But of course, it's not used. Maybe in some countries, in third world countries where there's really no resources, maybe this is used for women that have breast cancer. Absolutely incredible. The chemistry and structure of this oral anabolic steroid, it's testosterone derived. Remember, there's a methyl group, the classic alpha 17 alkylation, that makes it resistant to the first pass effect, also brings liver toxicity. The amazing structural independent aspect on the molecular side of this drug is the fluorination, the floral group of C9 and C3. This is what stabilizes this compound, this testosterone molecule, and it also makes it so anabolic and androgenic. I've talked to biochemists about this. Absolutely incredible. And this is old news, folks. This is 1950s, 1960s. The hydroxyl group in C11 limits the aromatization that we'll talk about of this molecule. So therefore, this is not estrogenic. It's a testosterone compound, but because of those molecular functional groups, it's not estrogenic. So of course, you don't see gynecomastia. Now, this is of course used as a sole agent. And I have anecdotes of that it was used as a sole agent. Of course, today and even back then, there's a combination. Everyone's using steroid-based compounds. It's polypharmacy. Testosterone esters, and then you add these onto it. So if you're on a testosterone ester and you have gynecomastia or water weight gain because you're on those drugs, it's very difficult to determine which agent's causing what. And that's incredible. That's the whole science and the bro science, if you will, about these drugs. So because it's not estrogenic and it's very androgenic, it's used for aggression and strength. There's no question about this. You don't need studies on this because it's in the underground. It's been used in the 1970s. There's no water gain. So boxers that are small boxers that need to make weight, fighters and powerlifters that need to make weight, they would use this. Bodybuilders, they're really not interested in this drug because it doesn't have the weight gain and that big muscle building properties. And that's for all you guys that have brought that to my attention. I do thank you for that. Very androgenic side effects. This is why it's used. They want it to have potential roid rage. But is it roid rage? Is it? I've heard boxers tell me from the 1970s, you know what, doc? We wanted to make sure, the trainers wanted to make sure they only gave this drug to level-headed guys. I've heard that from real professional boxers that boxed in Madison Square Garden in this country back in the 70s. Absolutely, this was used. This was a classic drug. This was this drug. All the boxers used this. They did, with or without the testing. Other androgenic side effects. Male pattern balding, obviously. This is very androgenic. Acne, and the severe stories I've heard for anabolic steroid-induced hypogonadism, that shutdown of the hypothalamus pituitary gonad axis. I've heard men using this drug, the boxers, using it for a couple of weeks before the matches and the boxing, the big championships. And then, of course, they didn't know, stopping the drug after going to severe depressions, massive depressions. You know what happened? They were shut down, and they didn't know to go on testosterone. And there were no doctors around to help them. Or maybe there were, and no one had any science. Now we understand that there's severe withdrawal and shutdown. And the FDA, just years ago, placed an on-box warning for testosterone, for addiction, abuse, and withdrawal. It comes from right here, the history right here. The side effects and the toxicity, and the reason why this drug is not really used in the bodybuilding community. Of course it is, but it's limited because of its toxicities. Probably those aggressive side effects, but also the classic one, if you talk to the bro science guys, it's liver toxicity. So doctor, this is an oral anabolic steroid with a classic alpha alkylation, but is it worse on the liver than D-bol, anadrol, even anavar? There are no studies on it. I have to be careful. I'm telling you, there's no studies on it. And men and women have used this drug for months, maybe even years at a time. So you just have to wonder, really, how toxic is it? At what doses? For what person? Be very careful. And doctors, beware of this drug, liver toxicity. Cardiovascular toxicity, classic oral anabolic drug. Interesting, it doesn't cause the edema and the bloating, so it won't cause classic acute aggressive hypertension with a water weight gain and the intravascular edema. Doctors, you know this, but it can cause vasoconstriction. It's going to affect all the arteries, those medial arteries, and vasoconstrict. And on those people that are susceptible, you'll see a spike in blood pressure. No question. And remember, it's never used as a sole agent. This day and age, it's added on to agents. Lipid toxicity, no question, it's going to tank the HDL and potentially increase the LDL man per man. LVH, over time, grows muscle, cardiovascular, left ventricle, not good, can definitely potentially over time with other drugs with susceptibility in men lead to LVH and worse in heart failure, in early and diastolic heart failure. Please pay attention, doctors. Get an echocardiogram. Please don't just scare these people and be aggressive and be a hater. Please encourage them to come in to get off these drugs. Use your smarts, doctors, and your technical savvy. Use technology and help these people. Give them an alternative. Hypercoagulable state, myocardial infarction, heart attacks and strokes. This day and age, we have controversy on testosterone itself on TRT doses. Could it cause a heart attack and stroke? Please pay attention. Please take every man as an individual patient and look at those individual risks. Any man that has a family history is going to be at risk of just aging and living. If he takes these drugs, I see it every day. He can get worse. He can have a heart attack. I see it. Walk into my office every day. That's for all you haters and bro science guys who think steroids don't hurt, because they definitely do. Life hurts. Getting older hurts. Hypertension, cholesterol, diabetes. Just living can hurt. Be very careful. This is science. And also a loving, caring, an aspect of taking care of people that are doing something. Forget the professional athletes who are cheating. These are just people that just want to be stronger and feel better. Be very careful. Do not discriminate on these people. Interesting features and controversies about Halotestin. So you hear the history. That powerlifter, that boxer takes it that morning because they want to be more aggressive and focused. Does it work? Well, let's look at the chemical structure again. The half-life of this drug is actually about 9 to 10 hours, not 30 to 90 minutes. I've checked into this with a biochemist. So does it actually work structurally and chemically? Can it take it and it can be fast-acting within hours in your brain? Probably not. It's a great placebo effect. Remember, these men are already aggressive. They're already amped up and pumped up. They're already on steroids. They take a pill, could be a sugar pill. They tell me, Doc, I was stronger. I got a personal record. I had the best fight of my life. I had the best match of my life. I had to use it. I felt my rage. Do we really know? It's amazing. But this drug is used for that. The boxers classically have told me, boxing in Madison Square Garden, I've taken anecdotes of many of these men that are now in their 70s and 80s. They used it for about 2 weeks, maybe a month. Of course, the day of the event, but they used it for a short period, and they said, boy, Doc, it worked like a charm. They were massively aggressive. But are they aggressive already? Were they just that good already? And did the real top guys like Muhammad Ali, did he use this drug? We don't know. Last piece is the conclusion always. This is a very toxic oral anabolic steroid. Like all the drugs, you have to be careful. I'm asking everyone in the world to be aware and to just educate and to share this information and talk about it, because they're not going away. These agents will not go away. They're readily available. Of course, they're all counterfeit, and they could be very, very toxic and contaminated. I ask healthcare providers, please, this is an interesting study. Follow me, come under my teaching. We're opening up, expanding my education now for healthcare providers. It's amazing the interest in the world. There's tens of millions of people on steroids and Peds, and they're so interested in this. And these are not cheaters and major league athletes. They're just regular guys and women. So please stay interested, stay humble, and of course, strong and healthy. Thank you so much. I really hope this helps everyone.
Thomas.
So I hope that video was helpful. Very, very interesting. So what I've learned now is that this drug is used to create aggression and physical strength, and can be used 2 to 3 weeks before a fight. Very interesting. So I'm going to continue doing this study of PEDs in boxing, and maybe even try and get this guy on the show, because I think it's important that we get to understand PEDs in boxing, not just talk about it and say this guy's on PEDs, but to actually look, study, and understand what the PED is, what the drug is, how it's used, the side effects, and instead of accusing people of doing it, that we actually have a better knowledge of what these drugs can do. Let's say these drugs are in boxing, but they're in the sport. Let's find out more about it. So I hope you found out this video interesting, to watch along interesting. By the way, let me know if you knew about this drug, or if you didn't know about the drug, if it's been educational for you. And also in the comment section, please do let me know If you're enjoying these watch along videos, I will continue to do the watch along videos for educational purposes only. I'm sure at some point in time these videos are going to be coming in very, very helpful within the boxing world. When we hear about the drugs on BWTM Sports, we'll know what they are and how they work. Thank you for watching. Again, this is BWTM Sports, and thank you so much to the physician doctor who gave so much information about that. 60s and the 70s were using it, and he said that people at Madison Square Garden that were boxing, top boxers, were using that stuff. So if they were using it then, there's nothing to say they wouldn't be using it now as well. So, and this video was done in 2019. We're now 2021. So I find it very hard to believe that people are not using this drug or even even more explosive drug than that. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. It makes me think more about fighters now that are so cool and calm outside the ring, but when they get inside the ring, they're aggressive. It does make you really think, and overly aggressive. We see them at weigh-ins where they look really aggressive. I've heard about guys being on steroids. You can see they're very aggressive, very interesting. Yeah, normally not like that, but come fighting, they're very aggressive, which we call they're switched on or in the zone. But it does make you wonder. So for those people who say boxing, there's no PEDs in boxing, or it doesn't exist, then think again, because you're just hearing it from a physician here that these drugs do exist in boxing, and it's serious business. Again, let's bring this up for you. That's the tablet. Get myself off camera. That's the tablet right there. Halotestin. That's what it is. Look it up yourselves. This has been a watch along with BWTM Sports Gaming. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and do leave your comments in the comment section. I read and reply to all comments. Thank you once again.